Hey everybody, what's up? You are listening to the Check Engine Podcast. We're not a professional podcast, but we are the only podcast produced entirely by three winners of IMSA's Spirit of the Race Award from the 2015 Sailing 6 Hours of the Glen. The usual cast of characters is here. My name is Nick, and I am graced by the presence of our producer Tristan, who's across the table. What's going on, Tristan?
Hello. After some technical difficulties last week, I think we're back on track. Spent some time ironing those out, but we are good to go.
Yeah, sorry about that, folks. It happens when you work with technology, though. Also here, we're honored to have Andrew back in his usual post as well. How you feeling today?
I ate too much pizza. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
I ate way too much pizza.
Haven't we all?
We're about to do one of our deepest thinking episodes we've done in the middle of a food coma.
Stuffed with cheese and bread.
Yes.
Exactly where you want to be.
Yeah. Well, I did drink Mountain Dew with it, so I got a little leg up on you guys.
He's good.
I'll be all right. I'll be the only one talking after about 15 minutes.
If you hear light snoring, it's one of us.
Oh, man. We've got a really good episode here for you tonight. We want you to let us know what you think of it, so please reach out to us. You can find us at checkenginepodcast.com. That can kind of be your home base. It'll get you links to everywhere where the cast is streamed. You can email us there either using the inbox at checkenginepodcast.com or any one of our names, Nick, Tristan, or Andrew at checkenginepodcast.com. Find us on socials. We're all over the place there as well. Let us know what you think. Guys, what is on tap tonight?
Well, does anyone have any pace lap kind of action to get into? I don't have anything. I'll say right up front.
I got a quick story from driving home from work today.
Yeah, let's hear it.
And although it is a couple blogs old by now, this is kind of an extension of my Stupid Drivers blog.
Well, that's never going to go out of style.
No.
So
that'll be a continual reference.
Driving home from work, for those of you in Wisconsin, you know Highway 16. For those of you not in Wisconsin, 2 lanes both ways, state highway, 70-mile-an-hour speed limit. Not an interstate, but close.
Mm-hmm. Almost.
The interstate's little cousin. And I'm driving in the left lane because I'm passing someone and I have lane discipline. And as I'm pulling out to pass them, caught Andrew mid-drink there.
No,
he almost spat his La Croix all over his microphone.
That was a little close.
So I'm driving in the left lane because I'm passing someone and I have lane discipline. And as I'm passing someone, the dump truck in front of the person I am passing puts on the left turn indicator to move over into the left lane.
Whoa.
Fully laden dump truck with gravel, and not like little pea gravel, like golf ball size or bigger that could really fuck up a windshield if something goes wrong. I figure, okay, puts the turn indicator on, gonna move over. I'll be a nice guy. It's Friday afternoon. I'm leaving work. I'm feeling good about myself.
Everything's good.
I'm in a good mood. I'll let him in. Maybe he's trying to pass somebody. Maybe the shoulder is closed in front of him.
Sure.
Maybe the police have someone pulled over up in front. He's trying to give the police officer room.
Lots of possibilities.
None of those things. This dude doing 58 in a 70 with a fully laden gravel-filled dump truck just decides, I'm bored. I'm going to see what the view is like 10 feet to my left.
I'm bored.
And just moves over in front of me for no reason. No reason whatsoever. I almost drove into a light pole. I was so full of rage. I was so angry.
Don't take it out on yourself. It's
just
okay.
on purpose.
If that truck wasn't bigger than the T McBee, I would have just ran his ass right off the road.
Unbelievable.
I was so mad. Like, this is what I'm talking about, people.
Did you then have to undertake him to go around?
Yeah. And I had to, and because now I was getting held up.
I imagine, like, the Undertaker's, like, pile driver move when he said that.
That's what it's called.
Yeah,
that's the actual name.
Undertaker.
So, and as I'm getting held up by the dump truck now in the passing lane, the person I had just pulled out to pass is now passing me back, so I had to wait to move over to get around him again. So angry.
That happens all the time.
It ruined a perfectly good afternoon.
That's a classic Wisconsin maneuver. People here do that all the time.
They just change lanes for no fucking reason whatsoever.
Just nothing.
I just feel like going over here now.
Yeah, and, on the other direction this morning, the same thing. I understand if you're uncomfortable going the speed limit, but once you begin to develop a parade, you need to get out of the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially when you're going through like one lane construction. That was my day ruiner. Almost happened on the way to work because I was parked in one lane traffic because of construction, right on Capitol Drive. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah.
And this guy, the speed limit is only one lane, but they have a 45 or 50 mile an hour speed limit. They haven't lowered it. This guy's going 35 because he's worried about how narrow the road is.
Yeah.
And he has 50,000 cars behind him, as far as I can tell. I can't see the end. And I missed being in front of this guy by one car. Because I was the one right behind him.
Nailed it.
And I was so mad.
If you would have left the house 34 seconds sooner.
Yeah, exactly. So, use your lane discipline, use your personal discipline, use your situational awareness. If there's a parade forming behind you, it's time to move over for a little while at least. You are not going fast enough.
Yeah, or something.
Please don't make us yell at you.
Or at our microphones, our poor microphones.
Please don't make us yell at you on the podcast, and please don't make us write about you on blogs. Just don't be the subject of this stuff, please.
Don't get in our way.
That too.
Out of my way.
That's what I had. I just had a afternoon ruining stupid driver in a dump truck. This guy gets paid to drive too. Like, he's got a CDL.
You know what? That's actually a really good point.
That's the most important part of this story.
He makes his living on the road, and he does stupid shit like this.
Yeah, you got to remember that part.
So,
I mean, but Nick, your day is not getting any better with what we're talking about today.
Why is that, Andrew?
Well, today we're going to tap into the cosmic truth behind the universe. Today, we're asking all of the big questions.
To make an infinitely brainy and witty and pop culturally savvy reference.
God, I don't want to hear
Here it comes. Are you ready? 42. Episode over. Yeah, aren't I cool?
No, not at all.
I don't think Nick gets it.
Not in the least.
I get it, and I hate you.
Good. I got you all fired up. Now we're ready to go.
I think even whether I got it or not, you spending longer setting it up than saying what you had to say ruined it.
That's the irony about
it. Hitchhiker's Guide reference for
yes.
this. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh.
The answer to the question of life, the universe, and everything is 42.
42, yes.
42?
Which, there's a whole story behind it. Google it. Find out what that story is. It's interesting.
We don't have time for the whole plot.
Exactly. That's why I didn't do it.
This is not a movie review
or
podcast.
Or a computer podcast, because it's actually a computer factoid. So
that's true.
Feel free to look it up. It's interesting.
But here's what we're really going to be talking about today. We are going to talk about the history of a car and the history of a car nameplate. And we're going to use this to examine what the hell GM is doing to the Corvette.
I love how you say to it, not with it.
I'm trying.
I feel the same way. I feel the same way.
What are you doing to it? That's the thing. Nick feels hurt in this scenario now.
Why? What are you doing to it? Leave it alone.
So
it can't defend itself.
But for how long have there been rumors about the Corvette going mid-engine? I mean, I didn't get into car culture until I was really in middle school or high school, and it was around then.
Yeah, they had a mid-engine concept car back in the, I want to say, in the mid to late 70s or early 80s or something like that. It was called the Aerovette.
And then again, I thought in the 90s.
Yeah, they've tossed the idea around a couple of times at least in the past, but this one seems unfortunately to be gaining some serious traction.
Yeah, so for people who might not know this, why are you listening to this podcast? But the Chevy Corvette.
Yeah,
how'd you find
listening
this?
to the podcast?
So the Chevy Corvette.
Welcome. We'll explain a few things.
Yeah, is a classic American muscle car, American sports car, American road icon throughout all of its iterations. No matter what you happen to think of a certain C series, you can't
popular
deny,
the world over,
right? And you can't deny the name Corvette is maybe more synonymous with American motoring than any other name in the whole business.
Possibly. You may argue the Mustang, but Corvette might be there. It was named after a World War II tank, and nobody remembers the tank anymore.
That's actually a really good point.
Yeah, especially after the international success in things like Le Mans,
exactly,
GT, class racing all over the world.
They run the GT3 versions in the ADAC Master Series in Germany. Le Mans. I mean, even though the past couple of years, due to the balance of performance and all that, they haven't been that competitive on pace. Wildly popular
Very
at Le Mans.
popular.
Still one of the most popular cars there with all the new technology coming in. Everybody loves the yellow Vettes. Everybody.
And that car, throughout its entire history, all its popularity, has had the engine in the front and the drive wheels in the back.
Damn straight.
No matter what else was different about the car, it had those two distinguishing features.
Yep.
Classic front-rear configuration.
Mm-hmm. But after decades of rumor, after all of the hype and the buildup, it now seems that GM is actually making this leap, and the next Corvette, which would be the C8, is that the
C8
correct?
would be the next version, yeah.
C8 would be the next generation. They're going to change it so that the engine is in the middle and the drive wheels are at the back. Now, when I was just thinking, sorry, I keep laughing because I keep picturing your response the last time we talked about this. Nick's, I think not to speak for him, but I think Nick's biggest problem with this, and he's far from alone in this thought, is that if you move the engine from the front to the middle of a Corvette, it's no longer a Corvette.
Exactly.
Because it can't be, because that's not where the engine's ever been.
So if, Andrew, you're a big, you've always been a Viper guy. You mentioned it in the Dream Car episode back.
Mm-hmm.
If they put the V10 engine from the Viper mid-engine or rear configuration, how would you feel?
I would only be offended if they put it in the rear, because that's the wrong place for an engine. Ask a 911. But
a car that's remained unchanged since its inception.
Something else we will probably discuss.
We'll probably get into that
Right.
deeper too on this,
but you got to remember, for example, with the Viper, there's only been, I think, total 3 different generations, 3 or 4?
2.5.
Yeah.
One of them was a facelift.
That's a good point.
Kind of thing. Yeah.
Right.
And it's not, while it is an icon to me, I can see how you can make an argument that that isn't even an iconic American car, just because it hasn't been around that long.
It keeps coming and going.
Yep, all of that stuff, where the Corvette has been here.
Sure.
Yeah. And I agree. I think the biggest issue comes not from any type of, performance or engineering standpoint. I think it comes from stylistic. And I think there is something that to be said from the really hardcore people that if the engine's out in the front and the drive wheels are on the back, it's not a Corvette, but it's going to be hard to stay recognizably a Corvette with the stylistic changes that are going to have to come by putting the engine in the back. You're not going to have that big long hood, things like that. I think that's what's going to catch people the most. It's going to be the most obvious reason people have an issue with it.
Well, that's the most obvious reason anybody even looks at a car is when they see it.
Yep.
They notice the styling aspect of it. It's like, oh, that looks cool. That looks nice. Let me investigate further. That's when you're going to make any sort of car purchase, right? Yep. So obviously the first thing they see is the shell. And if you completely rework that, how is the public going to react?
Yeah, it's along the same lines of rebranding the Eclipse as a crossover.
Oh.
You can keep it's like you can keep the name. You can even go as far as to keep the engine in the front, keep it a front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive platform. So mechanically, it could be actually very similar to the previous Eclipse, but it's not, because it's not the same shape.
So this is only tangentially related. I was actually driving behind an Eclipse Spider, after the post redesign where it had all the lines running across the back, and that car with the top down, I don't think there's any other car that looks as appropriate as a convertible as the Eclipse.
No.
Again, this doesn't at all relate to the Corvette, but
unrelated.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a great little car. So
talking about the looks of cars,
but that's actually a really good place to start with the looks, because yes, moving the engine to the middle of the car would absolutely, just obliterate the known silhouette.
Yes.
But if you look back at the previous generations of Corvettes, there's almost no symmetry. There isn't really one that significantly builds on the other, with the possible exception of C6 into C7.
C5 into C6,
That
very
would be-
much.
You think?
That would be my go-to.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, they took the C5, said, no more flip-up headlights, and that was it.
Okay, that's a good point.
I
guess, but the flip-up headlights were such a distinguishing feature of the 5.
I was pissed off when they took away the flip-up headlights.
Oh, see, they changed something.
But that's really, I think both of you are right in saying that, between the 5 and the 6, They are a very similar looking car. It's just that to me, I'm so distracted by
you could even say the 4 and the 5 were stylistically they were the same. The C5 was just more rounded. Yeah. Whereas the C4 was just C5 is a rounded version of the C4.
It took a big sanding block to it.
And just kind of rounded it off, whereas the C4 was pretty angular. I guess. The C7 is almost like they took the C6 and they sicked the engineer that did the new TCR on it. Like there's just a lot of extra bits going on, and
I think it's targeted to a different market. I think it's targeted to the people who watch more racing and kind of like that more Euro aesthetic.
And bits and bobs of aero and...
Yeah.
Yep.
That whole thing. So, I mean, all right, so what we're saying basically is that if you look through C1, C2, and C3, if those weren't all named Corvette, you might not actually know that they were all the same car.
Very true.
Yep. But then when you get to C4...
4, 5, 6...
I feel like 4 and 5 are different enough, and it may just be a question of the fact that one was built in the 80s, and one, kind of came through in the 90s, that the aesthetics of the car are so different, especially when it comes down to... Maybe it's just size, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the actual car is so different.
Yep.
I feel like those are different enough. And then when you get into 5... 6 and maybe even 7, I think you can see progression between those three. But is that enough? I mean, is that enough of a consistent aesthetic for us to say that the Corvette has to look like? What do we want to say? Like a angular wedge or like a?
Yeah, it depends on, I would say, how much you want to squint. I think if you look at even C's 1 through 3, although they could be confused with other things of the time,
right?
With some of their design cues, if you line up C1 through C7 and go squint really hard, they all kind of have the same fuzzy outline. They've got a big long hood for the most part, with the cockpit at the back and a square end on them for the most part. You get some fuzziness with windows shapes and things that. But
I think you're right if you eliminate the C1. The C1 was way different.
The C1 was super different.
But if you get to the C2 version, which is like the 63 split windows, and then into the Stingrays in like the late 60s, then yes, you're on the right path. But the C1 was an outlier. But that was also their first crack at it, and at the time there was no tradition or history behind it either.
Right. So very true.
They kind of had the right to say, let's kind of scrap that and try something else.
That's true.
At that point in time.
I don't know. I guess I think that the aesthetic of the Corvette changing so majorly based on the fact that they're completely redesigning the whole car and really, for the first time, the actual whole car from the chassis out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can see why it would cause concern, but I don't know that it's all that bad. I'm just trying to think of a comparison to use, because I don't know if there's another car out there that's done this and kept the nameplate and then held recognizability at all. I don't know if anyone's ever done this before. Actually, that's a really good point. I don't...
Mustang?
Engine placement hasn't changed.
Engine placement hasn't changed.
No, so I thought you meant like previous to the most current.
Well, actually, a lot of people were applauding Mustangs because with the late 90s or early 2000s, they actually went back to a more retro look,
right?
Which is what they still use today.
That's why I'm saying that's why I was lost in, because I was trying to think of answers as you were talking.
Yeah.
About how can you totally redesign a car from the ground up and still have it be recognizable as the same car?
Oh yeah, Mustang,
and they've definitely done that multiple times. That was my thought on that one.
There's been like 6 different looks for the Mustang overall.
While being still very, very different look to look and re-engineered from the ground up, they were still generally recognizable as Mustangs.
And they had front engine, rear wheel.
Yeah. So, no, I think the question, though, if you have the question that, can you totally change, the entire design of a car, the entire, body style, the entire silhouette, and have it be recognizable as the same car? I think by definition, no.
So let's look at another example to offset that. So the complete opposite of doing something like this is obviously, we already mentioned it, the 911.
Yes.
The Porsche 911 has essentially been unchanged for all of its existence.
Right.
And I mean, way back before it was, before Porsche was even its own company. That same design, I guess it's like triple eggs. You know what I mean? Yeah, like big egg, small egg, small egg. And
sure, okay.
With the round headlights and the engine in the wrong place all the way in the back.
Nick would call it the old triple jelly bean.
The triple jelly bean.
Triple jelly bean.
He loves jelly beans in cars for some reason.
Triple jelly bean.
Well, that's what they look like.
It does. It really does. To me, a modern, enlightened man, keeping your car the same for this long is really dumb. Especially when you look at what happened when Porsche, of all sins, changed the shape of the headlights in the 996 911s. The firestorm that occurred when they moved those headlights off round and brought them into the center of the
Don't
hood.
get me started on headlights.
Don't you know they ruined the car?
Well, that's and again, veering slightly but staying on track with headlights, you can say the exact same thing for the Jeep Wrangler. The least valuable Jeep Wrangler ever are the ones from Jurassic Park, as long as they're not painted like Jurassic Park Jeeps, because they have square headlights, which is a travesty, apparently.
So,
I'm kind of a Jeep person, but even I don't get that.
Yeah.
So
because it's part of the branding of
it is now.
Like it's literally in the logo of Jeep.
Right, it is now. But it wasn't. It's then.
True.
It became part of the branding when they listened to their consumer base, who they had no idea had an opinion on the headlights, because no one had said anything about the headlights until they changed them.
I think Porsche
beforehand, no one was going, I love the look of my Jeep, I love those round headlights. They had had the same headlights for a bazillion years.
Did Jeep take the time to ask?
No, but why would you if no one said anything about it? If you're a consumer and you really like something about a product...
A consumer bitches first before they compliment.
Very true.
I know. There's negativity bias. But it's nothing as seemingly paltry when you're looking at people who, in their different aspects, for Porsche people, nominally cost, performance, etc.
Sure.
Jeep, capability, ruggedness, things like that.
Round headlights.
Right, and never in that list is headlight shape.
Right.
But apparently they're a big deal.
So, I mean, I'm just bringing this up as an example of if we look at the C4 through the C7 Corvette as one, evolving body shape, I think you can definitely make the argument that it hasn't changed. It's changed only as much as the 911 has, in that the body changes as regulations adjust. More modern accents are brought in to kind of fit in with what cars are actually looking like. You
still have to sell to the modern audience, because the people who bought the C4s aren't able to buy. They're not going to buy the C7s. You need to get to a new audience, but you can still keep the heritage of the vehicle. I think I don't think there's anything wrong with what Porsche is doing with the 911. Like, that is their thing.
See, why
not? And it's worked for them so far. Update it, modernize it, go with regulations, go try to find, the next stylistic change that could attract that next new buyer. But a lot of times people who are buying Porsche 911s, or people who are buying Corvettes or Mustangs or any one of those iconic legendary cars, are people who are Wranglers.
That's true.
Who are buying it because of past experience, whether, my dad had one, my uncle had one, my grandpa drove one, my mom had one for a while. Like, it's because of that history that the new buyers are even getting turned on to it in the first place.
Sure.
For the most part. There are some casual people who just roll in and see it at a racetrack they go to or whatever, and they go, oh, that's cool, and check it out. But a lot of it is based on that heritage.
But I really think that when you reach the point with a vehicle where adjusting the shape of a headlight becomes a rallying cry for people to denigrate your brand, like, we will never buy a 911 again, they changed the headlights, you know what I mean? We'll never buy a square headlight Jeep.
Yeah, it's the whole
That's too far.
It's the whole idea of, and God, I hope I'm not offending anybody, but the sacred cow thing, where it becomes unchangeable because it is perfect, which we all know is not true.
Right.
And this assumption that because it has always been this way, it always needs to stay that way, is a significant logical issue. And you see it with a lot of stuff, though. And, I think that a lot of times people are not afraid to say, fine, if you don't want to buy one, maybe we'll just attract a bunch of new buyers, so forget it. And they move on. But some companies don't. They try to polish that image of this is the perfect vehicle. Never mind that we update it every year or two because we find something better to put in it, things to change, we update the thing. But no, we haven't actually changed anything, remember, because it's always been perfect.
No, that's exactly right.
That's what they're trying to push on people. I don't have a problem with updating things, but you hear about I don't know, German engineering, and you hear about Italian passion, and you hear about all these things that come from certain car companies or certain regions of the world that kind of have their niche, their thing. America has always been the muscle car. It has always been large front-engine vehicles because our racing was drag strip stuff back in the day. It wasn't road racing initially. So there's nothing wrong with keeping that. Why not let that be our thing? And if you look at it, yeah, the new Corvette, the C7 Corvette, doesn't matter what it's branded as. You could just take the badge off. That's a damn good sports car.
Mm-hmm.
Like they made, suspension upgrades, the magnetic, all this other stuff that they made, that they improved on, makes it a damn good sports car that makes these European and Japanese big timers take notice.
Right.
Like, oh wait, General Motors actually did something here, but it is still in that lineage of big front engine muscle car. Because that's our thing. It's America. That's just what we do.
Yeah, and I think there's a place for that. How I'm imagining the thought process at GM. Now, this is a convoluted company that I cannot imagine ever my one brain thinking like an entire company, but I'm gonna give it a shot. So
sit back, relax, enjoy Tristan's thought process.
Tristan's deep thoughts, TM. So the issue with it's a weird comparison, but I think the issue with the Corvette is also the issue with F1.
Ooh, wow.
It is supposed to be
the
top of the game. And it is, but the concept behind F1 was Formula One, the best, always.
Mm-hmm.
And they've made concessions to efficiency, cost. You never want to make concessions to safety. We know that. But, there are ways that the cars could be faster, could be better, could be more thrilling to watch. And they've made concessions to it for various political, economical, whatever reasons, when that's not the purpose of the series. So I think that's where I'm starting with that.
We were actually talking about that earlier this week before we recorded the episode that never aired.
The episode that wasn't.
The episode, the cast that ceased to be, because we were watching the rerun of the French Grand Prix, and it's like these guys aren't racing; they're just driving to a number.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
You have to make the fuel last this long, and you have to make the tires last this long. It's like
whereas if you allow larger fuel tanks, you allow the cars to be fast enough that over the course of a race, you can make fuel-based pit stops, all sorts of other options. And we're not going to get into an F1 podcast right now.
Okay, because I got a counterpoint to that,
which I think we can get to. I think, but they're racing to a number. They're not racing to be the best. And I think that's the problem with the Corvette. Is the Corvette was at the time cars were front engine rear drive.
Yes.
When the Corvette came out, and since then they've been making do with that platform. And they've been doing really well. What I think that they're seeing is, okay, if we can leave tradition to things like the Camaro, big, heavy, front engine, huge power, rear wheel drive.
I knew you were going to bring up the Camaro.
Things like that. You can leave the Camaro as our tradition,
mm-hmm.
But then,
or raise a Camaro and make it a new Blazer. But that's a different topic.
Also a different discussion.
Boy.
If we can leave that, my deep thoughts got thrown off.
Sorry.
You can leave the Camaro the way it is because it's not meant to be tier 1. It's not meant to be the very tippy top of anybody's building, the point of a spear. The Corvette is meant to be the best that GM can make. And I would argue that if you take the kind of thought and engineering and stuff that is made a frankly archaic platform design. Front rear is old. Front rear has poor weight balance issues. Front rear is not an excellent racing or sports car platform. It's great for things like GT cars, things like that, drag strip cars, GT cars. Excellent for that kind of thing. It's not the best type of sports car. And despite that, look at how successful the Corvette has been. I think what GM is looking at is if we can take the limiters off and make this a super light rear engine, a rear mid-engine, rear-wheel drive, check all sorts of other unholy boxes, hybrid, whatever, like think about all the things that they can option into this kind of unshackled Corvette and make it the best sports car the world has ever seen.
That is a really good point. All right, so thank you for listening to Check Engine Podcast. That's enough.
That's it. That's it for the night.
I think we just devastated that.
So it's if they can do as well as they've done with the Corvette, with the intense limitation of a front rear layout, think about what they can do if they put the effort to go in and kill things like Ferraris. They're gonna do it.
So okay, valid point.
Yeah.
I can give credit where credit is due. Lay off. But if they want to do that, if they want to take the chains off and make, the best, lightest mid-engine rear drive sports car they can, why not call it something else? Why does it have to be the Corvette?
Because the Corvette has always been the best. So think about this, people who are lovers of Corvettes. The Corvette is second best now.
Think about that. What if they had done this to the Camaro? Or like you proposed, whatever episode that was when we talked about Cadillac.
Make it a Cadillac.
Yeah.
What if they had made it a Cadillac and suddenly they're not racing Corvettes anymore?
They can still race Corvettes.
What if they're racing them in GT, though?
They do race them in GT.
No, I mean in like the Continental Series, the Tier 2 racing.
Okay.
See, because I think
they're still racing them. They're still selling them.
Would you really be okay with that if the Corvette was no longer your billable vehicle?
Because I think a lot of
because the Corvette will still be billable because it's still a Corvette. It still has the name recognition. It still has that heritage.
It has the name and recognition because it's always been the best America can do.
Mm-hmm.
When it's suddenly the America can do, who's going to care?
I think a lot of people are still going to care.
But think about the difference between watching the Corvettes in WeatherTech and watching the Camaros in Continental. It's just not the same. No one really cares about that Camaro.
There's still people rooting for them.
Yeah, but I think you know that it's different, especially when suddenly there's no Corvettes at Le Mans. Especially when suddenly there's no Corvettes racing overseas at all. It's Camaros, it's a Cadillac, it's whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that, but also they've been at Le Mans for 18 years out of their history, mm-hmm. So it's not like they've been there the entire time.
True.
So that wouldn't be a huge loss. I mean, it'd suck. I'll be honest with you, it'd suck, but it wouldn't be the end of the world. Look at the Porsche 911 is not the best car in Porsche's stable. There was the 918 Spider, but they labeled it something different. So why can't GM do that with their mid-engine car? Go ahead and make a mid-engine car.
Because I think there's a difference in strategy.
And the 918 was never a race car. It was a hypercar. It was designed to be a street car with hybrid technology that did something at the time no one else in the entire world had done, which is create the most unbelievably powerful hybrid car that did ridiculous shit.
Right. And I think there's a difference between a near concept car and
Halo car is the term
yes,
for that.
Halo car, yes.
Halo car is something that the most expensive one that will draw people in. You can even count things like GTIs and Golf Rs as Halo cars for people to buy like Jettas. It's all variable on scale. But the 918 I didn't research this in particular. Mm-hmm. How many did they make? A few thousand?
I
maybe
think
918s.
I don't even know.
Oh, I don't think they made 1,000 of them either.
I'm saying so is that really something then you can even really talk about in the scheme of a company? Like,
sure.
Okay, they've made
the best we've ever made. You better put that in the discussion.
but it's not the best you have to offer because only under 1,000 people can buy it.
True, they don't even.
But it's offered.
But when you
it's
go,
not just a auto show that they auto show.
But on the other hand, it
car
kind of
that they
is
trailer
because
around.
when you go to Porsche, the top car isn't the 918. The first car they show you is the 911.
It's the most
Or if
popular,
it's,
the one with the most heritage.
Or if it's SUV season, it may be
The Cayenne.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Yeah, but I think that
Isn't it always SUV season now?
Ugh, don't.
I haven't started. But no, but I think that when you look at where people are, because I think the we talk about them similarly because they both have a lot of history, but the Corvette is it for Chevy, for GM in general. For Porsche, they have had prototype race cars, unless like you can count like the some of the DPI cars where they're engined by but Porsche has designed entire prototype Le Mans race cars. They've developed the Porsche GT. They've got the 918. Every once in a while, they'll let the engineers go off in a corner and do something insane. Otherwise, they'll just all quit.
They just set the lap record at the Nürburgring, by the way. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah,
With
we
that
shouldn't
919
talk about that.
with that 919 hybrid.
I don't
Yeah.
care. I
So,
just don't.
But that's stuff that just keeps the engineers happy and says, look how much money we can spend.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the top tier of cars that you can go and buy whenever you want. So, and that's what I kind of mean by offer. Like, because technically,
Can you go buy a Porsche 911 right now?
I'm just saying, like, someone can though. If you have
Someone can buy a 918.
Not necessarily. There are a lot of cars
Not
that
now.
Right, there are a lot of cars that may never be for sale. There are cars that or will only come around 1 or 2 a year as they get resold. That's at auction, that's collectible. That's not a market vehicle.
So then wait, this is the perfect opportunity to segue into another point, which is it actually kind of circles back to what we were talking about before. So when we started this, Nick, you said the history of the Corvette was American muscle, racing light to light. The important thing to remember about that is those cars that started from weren't Halo cars. They specifically weren't Ferraris. They specifically weren't even Porsches. They were the family car. And while we're, 50 steps away from the family car being the car you go out and street race in,
Right.
what you can
Sometimes.
what I think you have to say about the Corvette is that part of its biggest appeal is that yes, it is in a lot of ways for GM their Halo car. That is the car that brings people in specifically because of the tradition, like you mentioned, Nick. But also it's the car that you buy before you hit retirement. That is your retirement present to yourself. That's the car that your dad had, and you can get it, and it is achievable. So if the Corvette became, the 918 or the P1, the car that you can't get because they only make 25, 100, 300 of them, that ruins the car name more than moving the engine location, don't you think?
Yes and no. That's a good question. Thinking about this one a little bit. Yeah, I guess you could say that.
I mean, I'm just wondering, part of what I'm so interested in this discussion is basically finding out where changing the engine layout lands on a sliding scale of history versus tradition versus performance. Because no matter what, if GM goes through with this, if this really is the next Corvette, they're doing something that, I cannot think of a single example of this.
It would be a huge risk, I think.
Oh, it is. Even going this far with it and not coming out and saying, it's not a Corvette. You know what I mean? Because now Auto Week and Car and Driver and everybody is showing these spy shots and these spy videos of this car saying, this is the C8. And dead silence from GM. Just dead silence.
Right.
Where, by the way, if I can go on a quick tangent here. Previously, like we mentioned, we have to take some time to, brag about how we're right about stuff like all the time. In these videos of the C8, people are speculating, because of some leaked drawings, there's going to be a larger V8 and a smaller turbocharged 4.2 liter V8.
My favorite V8 displacement.
But if that engine is not the same 4.2 liter twin turbocharged Cadillac motor that the now fired former CEO of Cadillac said was never going outside of Cadillac, I will eat a hat.
Not his hat, they're gross, but he'll eat a hat.
I will eat an actual hat. That is the frickin' Cadillac motor. It just is. Anyways.
Probably is.
I totally forgot where I was going with that.
They're at least using it for testing purposes.
Yeah.
If not putting it into production.
So we were right about that. Whatever.
Happens.
And I completely forgot what I was talking about.
Remember, folks, this is not a professional podcast.
Yeah. No, it's just
it's
totally
like a
gone.
history versus tradition versus performance scale.
What changing what element becomes the true tipping point? You know what I mean? I feel like moving the engine.
Like, where's the deal breaker? Like, where's the end game?
Really, where is it? And because I don't think, in my opinion, it's not moving the location of the engine. It would be doing something like putting a car or a brand above Corvette. That, I think, kills Corvette, the name, the respect that it has, much faster than moving the engine.
Yeah. See, I just can't agree with that. I think they can make whatever kind of cars they want. Just don't label it a Corvette.
Well, I think part of
the Corvette is good for what it is, just like a 911 is good for what it is.
I think the counterpoint to that is how, like a mother wolf protecting her young.
Oh boy! What in the hell?
With what kind of giant stick GM has been just absolutely beating any competitors to the Corvette with, like someone managed to let the ZL1 Camaro come through.
Mm-hmm.
That was like, and they're like, whoa, actually that's got as much power as the Corvette. We got to bump up the ZR1 next year. like every time anything threatens to match the Corvette, much less surpass the Corvette, it gets beaten to death with the Corvette is our best car stick. And I think that's because the people at GM know something that we might not in regards to marketing and things like that, where people don't want to see the Corvette taken off GM's throne. Be it a fast Cadillac, be it, they killed off Pontiac entirely because it was too sporty for Chevy's tastes.
Yep.
And
also stretching your resources too thin and needing a bailout.
Right. But,
yeah,
there was a reason it was early to go. Because things like, the G8 and stuff were starting to, especially some of the higher end G8s and the lower end Corvettes were getting too close. And
they also had plans to release a new Firebird that was going to be built on the Camaro chassis with a different engine.
Right. And I think every time there's a whiff that someone or something is going to take the crown off the Corvette's head, somebody in marketing says, we can't do that. And I think there's a reason. It's not the engineers. They're willing to build whatever. Again, we've mentioned it in our past episodes with Mercedes, with Porsche. Every once in a while, a brand will let the engineers out of their straitjackets and allow them to build whatever they want, except GM. There's never been that one-off, like, okay, we've got the 911. Let's let the engineers build a GT. Mm-hmm. Or like, hey, we've got, even Volkswagen, like, hey, let's build that crazy Pikes Peak racer because that'll make the engineers happy. Yeah. Like, there's always these one-off, either concept, limited run, race car, what have you, that get put out to appease the engineers' curiosity by everybody except GM.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's because no one at GM is willing to dethrone the Corvette because they're afraid of the backlash.
See, I think, I can't believe I'm mentioning this right now because it's who they are, but look at FCA. They let that exactly.
What car are you going to mention? They don't even make cars. What are you talking about?
Chrysler doesn't make cars.
Chrysler makes the Pacifica. That's it. But what Dodge does with the Challenger and the Charger, those are the name brands, right? Those are their cars. Anytime they let the engineers go nuts and make it something better, they brand it something different. That's a Demon. That's a Hellcat.
Well, I mean, yes and no. Definitely, the Hellcat is just a Challenger or a Charger. That is a package.
Yeah, you can say, I want it with this package. And if you look on the paperwork, it is a Hellcat Charger.
Yes.
Hellcat Challenger.
But I think the Demon is actually its own
and that's because
vehicle.
That's just because it's a Challenger body on something entirely different.
The underbody is different.
Yeah, there's very little technical similarity between those cars. It just happens to look like a Challenger.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you could do that. You could say, let's make it look like a Corvette and call it just without leaving the Corvette nameplate off. This is just the ZR1. It's not the Corvette ZR1. It's just the ZR1.
Sorry, while you brought up FCA, now I'm just freaking out so I don't forget this.
I freak out when we talk about FCA too. It's okay.
If we want to talk about bringing back nameplates or changing a car's history, whatever, and we want to talk about the Charger, then let's actually talk about the Charger. That car has 4 doors.
Which the Charger has never had until they gave it 4 doors.
But you know what? And of course, this is very different than changing the Corvette, which has been around, like I've been saying. When they brought that back, they just brought it back with 4 doors. And there were people up in arms like, you can't do that. You can't have 4 doors on it. And
the South Park background crowd. Rubble.
But the thing is, those people didn't even talk about that past the launch of the car. That's how insignificant that major change to the whole car in total was.
That was when we were in high school.
It was.
And one of my friend's dads said he would never buy one, and then he did.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I'll never buy that new Charger. It's got 4 doors. It's not a sedan. It's a sports car. And then by the time we graduated...
Can you talk the rest of this podcast in that voice,
sadly,
please?
no, it hurts my face. And then by the time we graduated high school, he had one. And I think that's what would happen with the Corvette. Everyone would be really mad, and then because it has those crossed flags on the hood, they're going to sell out. I think that's what's going to happen if they do this.
I think it might sell out, but I think it'll sell out because they're bringing in different buyers.
Okay.
Which for a company doesn't make it. Yeah, that's
right.
fine. However they're selling them, that's how they're selling them.
Talk to Harley about that.
Yeah, or talk to Buick, another
about
GM
that.
brand who was kept around because they were selling to old people during the
height of old people.
And those people all died. And now they can't sell Buicks for
anything.
Except
for China.
Oh, yeah. Well, but
For
they
whatever
relaunched it
reason.
as a super ultra luxury brand. There was no Buick in China.
Right.
Now there is Buick in China, and it's something totally
And
different.
here, where there's always been Buick, it's still Buick.
So can I throw this wrench into it? Is it possible that now, talking about the marketing team at GM, they're looking at Buick running around right now, I imagine, in their offices going, shit, what are we going to do about Buick? They're taking the letters Buick off of the car, and they're like, that'll fool them. They won't even know. They'll just buy this car.
Instead of the most weirdly archaic looking part of it, the heraldry.
Exactly.
Like nice sans serif, flat, simplistic Buick would be far more modern, far more young person than a Shield.
But is it possible
Or 3 of them, even.
that GM is actually learning a little something from that and going, yes, right now the people who buy Corvettes are an older demographic generally. It's not just price point. It's also, the layout. And it's also the fact that when we're talking about the price of that car, you could get the Corvette or you could realistically get a 911. Something, a little more European, a little more modern, quote unquote. And GM's looking at that and saying, you know what? The people who would buy a Corvette will always buy a Camaro. The people who might buy a Corvette that's mid-engined
are going to buy something else.
Exactly.
If we don't
wouldn't buy anything in our lineup. What do you think about that? Looking at it from the other aspect, where
it goes back to our discussion about Ford pulling out of cars in general. You're leaving market on the table.
Yep.
If you don't offer something that people clearly want.
Offer it then. Just don't call it a Corvette. That's what I've been saying.
But back to what Tristan said, if that's your tip of the spear, if that's the brand name that's so iconic it actually surpasses the company name, which I think we can all agree Corvette does.
Yeah.
You don't need to say
it's not a Chevy Corvette.
No,
it's a Corvette.
It's just a Corvette. That car has to be something truly special, and not just because it, and not just be the same thing. It has to be the best, like Tristan was saying. I really do think that is a clinching argument that he made. That Corvette has to be the tip of the spear.
Like I said, at least the best consistently available.
Mm-hmm.
So you can always have the one-offs and limited runs that you can name something else. You can give it a crazy numbers and letters designation. Chevy tends to like Z.
Yeah.
So call it the ZXR. They make 200 of them. It costs $300,000, and it goes a bazillion miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, call it that, right? Whatever, do whatever you want to do. But if I have the money and I walk up to a Chevy dealer and tell them I want a ZR1, they'll have one. It will be available. It is available in essentially unlimited numbers, given enough time. You might sell out of a model year or whatever, but the new ones are coming. You can always get another one. And I think that's the key to your best car, because we talk about best cars being the technical best, but when you look at, from both the car company and the consumer standpoint, it's often brought up in the context of cell phones. The best camera is the one you have with you. The best car you can buy is the car you can buy. And I think that's part of the mystique of the Corvette, is it's always been this accessible, both financially and stock availability, car that performs sometimes miles above cars that are far more difficult to get your hands on, difficult to maintain, cost a lot more, things like that. And I think that think about this as the next coup. Like, okay, great. Americans are winning their class in Le Mans again because, when Corvettes are big, because the Corvettes have made their statement, America can race sports cars. What if the next statement is America can make mid-engine sports cars? Like, why fear that evolution? And why fear putting that on the Corvette? Because
I don't fear the evolution whatsoever.
You just think it's not a Corvette.
I just think it's not a Corvette.
But or think about it like this. I see what Tristan's saying in the reflection of the most idiotic T-shirt on the planet that's sold at all racetracks all year round. I don't know what's on the front, but on the back it says, "My car's a Corvette. Your car couldn't beat one if it had the suspension from a 911, Ferrari engine." You know the one I'm talking about. I did like 5 car parts.
It was that guy that was standing in front of us at VIR was wearing
it. Was, yes,
See
exactly.
our dream car episode.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it could. The one I made could beat a Corvette.
Probably.
But, that is the actual perception of the Corvette in certain areas of the world. That T-shirt is available everywhere because quite clearly it actually sells.
It sells.
To keep that mystique with a younger audience, the car has to change because front engine rear drive sucks for racing. At a very basic level, there are better layouts. There are better designs, even to race.
I'm not denying that.
Yeah.
But it's still not a Corvette.
Because
it's not what a Corvette is. Why can't you just let it be good at what it is?
Because what it is no longer necessary.
There's a lot of things that are no longer necessary.
It's duplicated.
But it's not necessary inside the context of Chevy. They made that Camaro, like Tristan said, suddenly Corvette division's panicking because that ZL1 is a damn better track day car than the Corvette because of the price point and because of what it offers on the actual track itself. They were aiming at the Mustang and they accidentally shot the Corvette. It happens.
They shot through the Camaro,
through the Mustang,
and hit the Corvette behind it.
Yeah,
and that's and I think that's part of it is, you need to look at.
You wonder what it was like in that engineering room when they saw what the ZL1 was doing. Were they like, yes, or were they like,
Uh-oh.
There was one guy at the back like,
oh shit!
Everyone at the front is cheering, and there's one guy with this shocked, slapped in the face with a fish,
like pale white.
Yeah, it's like, oh no, we're all gonna just get sent away in black bags.
Exactly.
Yeah,
But for the first, exactly. But for the first time, GM didn't do that, and we can't say whether or not this has been in process for 5 years, for 6 months, or for 95 years. We don't know how long this mid-engine change has actually been.
Probably not 95 years.
98.
To be exact.
Longer. But I don't know. I think it's so interesting that GM, a company, frankly, who is not known for either adaptability or the ability to predict the market, is doing something so out of left field that it can't just be random. It can't be reactionary. This has to be planned. And
Sure.
I think, I don't know. I think the C8, if it is mid-engined, is definitely a Corvette, with the exception of one thing. There's one major problem that actually puts me in Nick's camp.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't know what they're gonna do. I don't pretend to be telling the future. My bring to this discussion was, if they are doing it, what would it mean? So I can't. Even as much as you guys know, I haven't been paying attention to this particular story as much as you guys have, so I couldn't tell you what they're going to do. But if they did do it, that's what I was discussing.
Here's the biggest problem with the car. It has nothing to do with engine placement.
The color?
Not the color.
The type of engine? You just kind of alluded to that earlier.
No, not that either. This car is not a Corvette because it doesn't have
Flip up headlights.
a manual transmission. No manual transmission option is the current rumor. Can it really be a Corvette without a manual transmission?
That's a double no. At least give it paddles. Even if you can't row your own.
I think
Because
double
that's
clutch.
because again, not my wheelhouse, but that's the discussion around the latest, fastest Porsche GT2, GT3, whatever's the fastest one.
Probably GT3 RS.
They don't offer it without a DPK
Mm-hmm.
because
It's a paddle shifter. It's technically a manual, quote unquote.
it's a
But it's a sequential. You don't
it's
need
a
to clutch
paddle
it.
shifted sequential manual related in technology to the DSG and Volkswagen cars,
Yep.
things like that.
Yeah.
Because Porsche said, this is our fastest car. These transmissions are notably faster than manual transmissions in every circumstance.
Yes.
We've put our race car drivers in ones with manuals. In development, they pulled the whole thing out, had one with a manual, one with a DPK, and said, race the crap out of these. And even with the race car driver bias of intentionally only taking the DPK up to 5th instead of 6th, trying to cripple this in the eyes of the engineers, because race car drivers don't like sequential gearboxes. They like, in every manner trying to say, we don't want this to happen. The transmission makes that car the fastest car it can be, and there's no compromises from Porsche because
I'm just picturing you on a stage doing this presentation and just, boo, boo. It's a fast gearbox. Boo.
boo, I swear you'll like it. No, and and so they have made the decision to, despite, because the 911 has always been manual, that it has arguably had one of the best manual gearboxes ever. The 911R last year or the year before was lauded as having one of the best manual transmissions ever made, and Porsche said, we're going to throw that away. We don't want that because it needs to be the fastest car. And that comes back to our discussion: is Chevy going to make the Corvette for being the Corvette's sake, or are they going to make it the best car they can make it? And that's the question.
We don't even know. We don't even know the answer to that
no.
question.
The question I got from that is, isn't it funny how race car drivers need engineers to help set up the cars, but they turn against engineers at every chance they get?
Yeah, I mean, you have to do that. Otherwise,
Our car needs to be better. No, let me do it.
they don't know. How can they know?
Engineers don't drive the cars.
They don't drive the cars.
That's right.
And then they pull into the pits. This thing sucks.
Well, if you'd let me do my job.
No, I don't want you to do your job. I want to do it myself. This thing sucks.
I gotta say, though, the fact that, obviously all this speculation now, if they don't offer a manual for any speculative C8, mid-engine or not, I almost feel like that takes it further away from being a Corvette, a real Corvette, than moving the engine does, simply because...
It's no longer a driver's car at that point. It is just a person's car.
As much as it sounds like such a dick thing to agree with that, I completely agree with that. If it doesn't have a manual, it's not a driver's car.
That's right.
Why?
Because
There we
Don't
go.
ask questions. I don't know. It's a dumb hang up. I fully admit that.
Okay. Maybe drivers is the wrong word.
Pretentious people's car.
No, it is not an enthusiast's car.
Not even that, because, cost-wise, unless there's some company that makes the manual more expensive.
No.
No, there is. There definitely is a company where you pay extra for, it's Kia.
Oh, compared to their regular auto.
Yes, compared to the auto, you pay more for the manual and the SX.
Yes. Yeah, well, because you can throw together cheap slush boxes way easier than you can...
No, in the SX, the one that has their version of a double clutch, you pay more for the manual.
Never mind that.
Stupid.
Yeah.
But anyways, the manual car is generally the cheaper car. The reason why I put so much stock into a manual transmission is because all other things aside, all other information about the car aside, as dumb as that sounds, steering response, power, features in the car. If you have a manual gearbox next to you with a clutch, you are more connected to that car just by virtue of doing the physical activity to change the gear.
Experience of driving the car.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I think a driver's car was a poor choice of words, because everybody out there can get their driver's license and be a driver. It's an enthusiast's car.
Yeah, and I've had a similar discussion in previous conversations with coworkers and stuff. I'm coming from the entire other direction. I have minimal knowledge of driving a manual transmission on anything except a motorcycle, but you do get that same connection to the vehicle on a motorcycle.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's a distraction. For me, I am out there to enjoy the driving of the car, not the sensation of the car. That would be like saying...
No, I get that.
More related to my current job, that would be like saying, yes, we have to make this power tool really shake in your hands. That's how you know you're using a man's tool. Like, it doesn't make it a better place to do your work. It makes it more connected, it makes it more tactile, it makes it more sensory, but it doesn't make it a better way to do what you enjoy. For me, wrestling my motorcycle up and down through 2 gears through a series of curves I enjoy riding my motorcycle through curves. If it didn't do that, if I didn't have to fiddle around with gears, I'd be more focused on my lean angle. I'd be more focused on speed. I'd be better able to enjoy my surroundings. I'd be paying more attention to the stuff around me for safety reasons, things like that. I get caught up in looking down at my speed and paying attention to how fast things are going by me, so I know what gear to put my car in, what gear to put my bike in when I make a turn, versus setting myself up at an angle and speed that feel good and taking that turn without having to worry about what gear I'm in. A computer has chosen that for me based on engine RPM and other stuff like that. So like I said, I can only compare apples to pears. They're similar. They're not apples to oranges. But having driven that GTI that my dad had with the double clutch gearbox in it, you put that thing in sport mode, it keeps you right in the heart of the torque all the time. The shifts are instantaneous. So for me, I'm better able to enjoy the placement of the car on the road, the sensation of speed, things like that. And so that's my answer to that. I think there's still... I want to own a manual transmission car at some point because I want to find out. It comes so highly recommended that, I want to try it. But my perspective coming from the other way, I've never owned a manual transmission car. I've never spent a lot of time in detail learning how to drive one. And to me, it seems like it would get in the way of the part of driving I enjoy.
Once
So,
you
we'll
get
see.
used to it, it's second nature.
But it's really, to me, it's not even the second nature. I think what you're expressing, more than the fact that it's taking up active brain power, is that when I get in my car with the manual transmission, I'm in there for the actual experience of operating the gearbox in relation to how the car is traveling. It actually is not necessarily about finding the right gear. It's about choosing a different gear, a wrong gear, quote unquote, to get a different result in the corner. It's about knowing a road and saying, you know what? If I drop 2 gears here at the bottom of this hill instead of before I enter the corner, I can have a lot more fun at the beginning of the corner instead of the end. You know what I mean? It's those little adjustments,
Little nuances.
Yeah, to the regular pattern that captures my heart in a manual.
Which you can do without all the fuss in a double clutch gearbox, though, with some very wide safety margins so you don't blow things up.
Mm-hmm.
You can put that gearbox wherever you want.
True.
And even skipping a gear. If you bang that DSG down 2, where it would have to move a clutch from one gear to the other, it's still faster than most people doing a manual transmission. If you're a well-skilled race car driver, you've driven the same car in race settings for 20 years, then maybe you can do it pretty well. But you can have different impacts because you're in different gears, things like that. You know, the only thing that I could see being something that would worry me is, you know, how can you apply the clutch in certain circumstances? And that's why I want to find this out. But to me, getting back to our main point, I couldn't care less what transmission is in a Corvette, as long as it allows me to drive it in a manner that will give me, you know, many speeding tickets and possibly jail time. Like, you know, like I want to be driving it really fast because it's meant to be driven really fast. How that happens, I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, this is not the podcast on the merits of manual versus automatic.
But in some ways it is, because
it has to do with the Corvette.
Yeah, and to me, yes, the and it may even, it's dumb to say it can't be a Corvette if it doesn't have a manual option. What I think it will say is, no matter where they put the engine, no matter where they put the drive wheels, if it doesn't have a manual transmission, it will never have my attention, never mind my heart.
It won't be a Corvette.
See, and that's, I think we have a, I think we
just
have
like if they move the engine.
I think we have a continuum here as to what will and will not be a Corvette for us.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's the fast one that Chevy makes.
It's anything.
Yeah, it's the fast one that Chevy makes. That's all I know.
That F-16 fighter, they put the cross flags on it. Tristan's like, no,
yeah, look at Corvette.
I like that Corvette.
Yep. It flies now. Did you see that they added that? You know, it just looked like it flew before, and now it does. I think it's really cool. You know, versus Andrew, where there are certain things that would make it not a Corvette and uninteresting, versus Nick, where there are other things. They may overlap.
There's basically everything. If they change anything, it's not a Corvette.
That's right.
If it's not a C5, it's not a Corvette.
I almost had an aneurysm when they took away the flip-up headlights. It took me long enough to get over that. Just don't move my engine, please.
The C6 is still my favorite one. On a semi-related note.
5 or 6. Yeah.
If I were to buy a Corvette for whatever reason, I would find a C6 to buy.
I totally agree.
Yep.
6.
Oh, let's agree on a C6 and wrap this up, shall we?
Yeah,
Sounds good to me.
So, who are we thanking this evening as we wrap up?
I guess I'll have to thank pizza, because I love it and I ate too much of it. I'm pretty sure I thanked pizza before, so I'm fat.
Okay.
Double pizza.
Double pizza.
I would like to thank automotive spy shot paparazzi journalists.
Oh God, they do work.
Because without them, we wouldn't have this conversation.
That's very true.
That's true.
All on speculative rumor.
That's right. Speculative rumor and kind of fuzzy pictures.
Exactly. What are we doing?
We're not professionals.
We're not being a professional podcast.
No pros.
Yeah.
That's what it is. I'm gonna change it up a little bit. I'm not gonna do a thank you as opposed to tonight. I'm gonna do a quick apology to everybody because we're over a week late in getting you on. Technical difficulties. We do apologize. We thank you for hanging in there. That's what my thank you is. Thanks for being patient with us. But there were some things that we said on the podcast that never got aired that I think we should say here. For instance, we wish them luck on socials today. By the time this airs, they will have already raced at Watkins Glen.
That's right.
But best of luck to our compadres at Murillo Racing, Jeff Mosing, Eric Foss, and crew. Go get them. Give our sticker on the back a good ride this weekend up in upstate New York.
That's right.
And
may it be infinitely less rainy than the last time we were there.
Oh,
let's see that, and let's see that orange AMG on the podium this time.
definitely.
Best of luck, guys. And we always thank you, the listeners. Again, thanks for being patient with us through the little technical snafus we had. Reach out. Let us know what you think. Does the history of a car matter? Does moving the engine or changing the gearbox, is it still going to be a Corvette in your eyes? If they change anything on the 911, is it still going to be a 911? Let us know what you think. So you can reach out on Facebook. We're at Check Engine Podcast. Comment there, like us there. If you don't like us there, please share us, because even if you don't like us, someone else might. Find us on Twitter. That's what I'm looking for.
That one.
That's the word. Find us on Twitter at Check Engine Pod. Same handle for Instagram as well. You can find us streaming on Google Play, iTunes, Spotify, Overcast, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Castbox, and there's that new one that's a .audio.
Breaker.audio.
Breaker.audio. And as always, anchor.fm/Check Engine Podcast is, well, our anchor. That's where everything stems from. So reach out. We can't wait to hear from you. We can't wait to talk to you again. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.